When we speak about talking to Allah, the first thing we must understand is something very simple, yet very powerful. Allah is always listening. Many of us grow up thinking that speaking to Allah has to be formal, complicated, or filled with long phrases that we might not fully understand. Because of that, sometimes we hesitate. We think, what should I say? Am I saying it correctly? Are my words good enough? But the reality is that Allah does not need perfection from our words. What He loves is sincerity from our hearts. Allah already knows what is inside us. He knows our worries before we even say them. He knows our struggles, our fears, our hopes, and the silent battles we fight every day. Yet, despite knowing all of this, He still invites us to speak to Him. The Quran reminds us that when His servants ask about Him, He is near. He responds to the call of the one who calls upon Him. Think about that for a moment. The Creator of the heavens and the earth, the one who controls everything in existence, tells us that He is close and that He listens when we call Him. And Ramadan is the perfect time to rediscover this closeness. During Ramadan, something changes within us. Our hearts soften, our routines slow down. We begin to think more deeply about our relationship with Allah. When we fast throughout the day, feeling hunger and thirst, we are reminded that we are doing this for Him alone. That feeling naturally opens the door to conversation with Allah. Sometimes people imagine that talking to Allah must only happen during formal dua after prayer. But in reality, it can happen anytime. While you are walking, while you are sitting quietly before iftar, while you wake up in the calm moments before suhoor. In those moments, you can simply speak to Allah. You can say, Ya Allah, I am struggling, or Ya Allah, guide me, or even, Ya Allah, I feel lost and I need your help. There is no barrier, no appointment needed, and no special place required. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of our relationship with Allah. Every other relationship in this world has limits. People become busy, phones go unanswered, messages are ignored. But Allah never becomes tired of listening. No matter how many times we return to Him, no matter how many mistakes we have made, His door remains open. In fact, scholars often remind us of something very profound. When Allah places the desire in your heart to call upon Him, that itself is a sign that He wants to hear from you. The very urge to say, Ya Allah, is already a blessing. So in this blessed month of Ramadan, let us remove the distance we sometimes place between ourselves and our Lord. Let us remember that Allah is closer to us than we realize, always listening, always aware, and always ready to receive the words of a sincere heart. And sometimes the most powerful conversation with Allah begins with the simplest words, Ya Allah, I need you. Palms, crescent. Once we truly understand that Allah is always listening, the next realization naturally follows. We can talk to Allah about everything. Not just the big moments of life, not only the desperate situations when we feel we have nowhere else to turn, but every part of our lives. Our worries, our dreams, our fears, and even the smallest details that we might think are insignificant. Many of us restrict our conversations with Allah without even realizing it. We feel comfortable making dua when we are in hardship, when something has gone wrong, or when we are facing a major decision. But our relationship with Allah is meant to be much deeper than that. It is not meant to be a connection that appears only in moments of crisis. It is meant to be a constant conversation. Think about the relationships that matter most to us in this world. The people we are closest to are the ones we share everything with. We tell them when we are happy, when we are confused, when we are worried about the future. We speak openly because we trust them. Now imagine if we developed that same openness with Allah, except that Allah understands us far better than any human being ever could. When something good happens in your life, speak to Allah about it. Say, Ya Allah, thank you for this blessing. When you feel uncertain about the future, Say, Ya Allah, guide me to what is best. When your heart feels heavy and you cannot even explain why, you can still turn to Allah and simply say, Ya Allah, you know what I am feeling. Nothing is too small to bring before Him. Sometimes we think that our problems are not important enough, that perhaps others have bigger struggles, and therefore we should not ask Allah about our small concerns. But Allah is the Lord of everything. The one who manages the entire universe is not overwhelmed by the needs of His servants. Your smallest worry matters because you matter to Him. And sometimes the most sincere conversations with Allah happen in the quietest moments. A person sitting alone before iftar, whispering a dua from the heart, a young student asking Allah for success in an exam, a parent praying for the safety and guidance of their children. These moments may seem small in the grand scheme of the world, but they are incredibly meaningful in the sight of Allah. Ramadan gives us a special opportunity to rebuild this habit. Throughout the day, we are already thinking about Allah because of our fast. Our hunger reminds us that we are doing this for His sake. Our prayers become more frequent. Our nights become more reflective. In such a month, it becomes easier to turn those thoughts into conversation. Instead of keeping everything locked inside, let Ramadan be the time when we open our hearts to Allah. Speak to Him about your goals, your regrets, your struggles with faith, your hopes for the future, and the things you wish you could change about yourself. Be honest, be sincere, and remember that Allah knows you better than you know yourself. And when you begin to speak to Allah about everything in your life, you will slowly realize that your heart no longer feels alone. Because the servant who shares everything with Allah never truly feels abandoned. Palms up together as we continue this journey of speaking to Allah openly about everything in our lives. We must also remember that the essence of this conversation is dua. Dua is not merely a ritual we perform after prayer, or a set of memorized phrases we repeat without reflection. Dua is the voice of the heart turning directly to its Creator. It is one of the most intimate acts of worship a believer can experience. When we make dua, we are acknowledging something profound about ourselves and about Allah. We are admitting our weakness and our need, while recognizing His power, His mercy, and His ability to change any situation. In a world where people are often encouraged to rely only on themselves, dua reminds us that true strength comes from turning to the one who controls everything. But sincerity is the soul of dua. Without sincerity, words become empty. A person might recite beautiful supplications, yet if the heart is distracted, if the mind is wandering, the conversation loses its depth. Allah is not impressed by the length of our dua or the eloquence of our language. What moves a dua upward is the honesty behind it. This is why sometimes the most powerful dua is also the simplest one. A person who raises their hands and says, Ya Allah, forgive me, with genuine regret, may be making a dua more beloved to Allah than pages of memorized words spoken without feeling. The heart that trembles before Allah, the heart that admits its mistakes, the heart that sincerely seeks help. This is the heart that finds acceptance. Ramadan, in particular, magnifies the beauty of sincere dua. Our fasting softens us. When the body is restrained from food and drink, the soul becomes more aware of its dependence on Allah. That awareness creates a kind of humility that makes dua more genuine. When you stand in prayer after a long day of fasting, when your lips feel dry and your body feels weak, your dua often comes from a deeper place within you. And sincerity also means honesty. When we speak to Allah, we do not need to pretend to be stronger than we are. If you struggle with a habit, tell Allah. If you feel distant from your faith, tell Allah. If you feel overwhelmed by life, tell Allah. The door of dua is not reserved for the perfect believer. It is especially open for the struggling one. In fact, some of the most transformative moments in a believer's life begin with a sincere dua. A person might sit alone at night, feeling broken, unsure of how to fix their life, and in that moment they turn to Allah with complete honesty, asking for guidance, asking for forgiveness, asking for a new beginning. That single sincere dua can become the turning point of their entire journey. This is why the Prophet letter F.D.A. taught that dua itself is an act of worship. Every time you raise your hands, every time you whisper a request to Allah, you are strengthening your relationship with Him. You are acknowledging that He is your refuge, your protector, and your ultimate source of help. So, in this blessed month of Ramadan, let our dua come not just from our tongues, but from the deepest part of our hearts. Because a sincere dua, even if it is only a few honest words, can reach the heavens and change the course of a life. Palms up together as we deepen this habit of making sincere dua. Another important reminder naturally follows. When you speak to Allah, you do not need complicated words. You do not need to search for perfect phrases or worry about whether your sentences sound eloquent enough. What matters most is that the words come from your heart. Many people hesitate when it comes to dua because they feel they do not know enough Arabic or they have not memorized many supplications. They listen to beautiful duas recited by scholars or imams and think to themselves, my dua could never sound like that. And because of that feeling, they sometimes hold back. They remain silent when they could be speaking directly to their Lord. But this hesitation comes from a misunderstanding. Allah is not judging the beauty of our vocabulary. He is listening to the sincerity of our hearts. The one who created every language, every sound, and every expression does not require us to speak in a specific style in order to be heard. If you know authentic duas from the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet letter, FDFA, that is wonderful and beneficial. Those supplications are full of wisdom and blessings, but they are not the only way to speak to Allah. Sometimes the most meaningful dua is when a person simply speaks in the language they understand best. A person might sit quietly after prayer and say, Ya Allah, guide me, or Ya Allah, help me become a better person, or Ya Allah, give me strength to change. These simple words, spoken sincerely, can carry immense weight. Think about it this way. If a child speaks to a loving parent, the parent does not care whether the child uses perfect grammar or sophisticated vocabulary. What touches the parent's heart is the honesty of the child's words. In a far greater and more perfect way, Allah looks at the sincerity of His servants. He knows what we are trying to express, even when we struggle to find the right words. And for many of us, speaking in our own language allows us to be more open and honest. When we use the language we think in, the language we dream in, the language that carries our emotions, it becomes easier to express what we truly feel. Our dua becomes less formal and more personal. It begins to feel like a real conversation rather than a recitation. Ramadan is a beautiful opportunity to practice this kind of conversation with Allah. When you break your fast and your hands rise in dua, speak to Allah from your heart. When you stand in prayer at night and the world around you is quiet, whisper your concerns and hopes to Him. Do not worry about whether the words are simple. Simplicity is not a weakness in dua. Often it is a sign of sincerity. Over time, you may notice something remarkable. The more naturally you speak to Allah, the closer you begin to feel to Him. Your dua no longer feels like a distant ritual. It becomes a living connection, a moment of honesty between you and your Creator. And in those moments, you realize that the most powerful duas are often the ones spoken in the simplest words from the deepest parts of the heart. Palms up together as we continue building this habit of speaking to Allah sincerely and in our own words. It is also important to recognize that there are special moments when our dua carries an even deeper power. Islam teaches us that while Allah listens to us at all times, there are certain moments when the doors of mercy are especially open, and the heart is naturally more connected to its Creator. Ramadan in itself is one of those extraordinary times. The entire month is filled with opportunities for dua, reflection, and closeness to Allah. But within Ramadan, there are specific moments throughout the day and night that the believer should try to recognize and take advantage of. One of these moments is the time before suhoor, in the quiet hours before dawn. At that time, the world is still. Most people are asleep, the noise of daily life has not yet begun, and the heart is naturally calmer. Waking up for suhoor is already an act of obedience, but those few moments before the fast begins are also a beautiful opportunity to speak to Allah privately. A believer sitting in the quiet of the early morning, whispering dua with sincerity, is engaging in a moment that carries deep spiritual weight. Another powerful moment is immediately after Salah. When we complete our prayer, our hearts are already focused on Allah. We have just stood before Him, bowed before Him, and placed our foreheads on the ground in humility. In that state of closeness, it is natural to raise our hands and continue the conversation through dua. These moments after prayer can become daily anchors that strengthen our relationship with Allah. Then there is the time of iftar, when the fast is about to end. After a long day of hunger and thirst, the believer is reminded that they endured this for the sake of Allah alone. In those final moments before the first sip of water or the first bite of food, the heart often feels a unique sincerity. It is a moment filled with gratitude, relief, and humility all at once. Making dua at that time allows the believer to turn that feeling directly toward Allah. And of course, the nights of Ramadan offer some of the most powerful opportunities of all. Standing in prayer during the night, especially in the calm and reflective atmosphere of Ramadan, opens the door for deep conversations with Allah. When the world becomes quiet and distractions fade, the heart often speaks more honestly. Within those nights lies an even greater moment, the night known as Laylatul Qadr, a single night that is better than 1,000 months. On that night, the believer's dua carries immense significance. Every whispered request, every sincere plea for forgiveness, every hope placed before Allah can become part of a moment that shapes a lifetime. The beauty of all these moments is not that Allah listens only then. He listens always, but these times help us become more aware, more present, and more focused in our conversation with Him. And the believer who learns to recognize these blessed moments will never feel that there is a shortage of opportunities to turn to Allah. Because, in Ramadan, every day and every night holds a doorway for the servant who wishes to speak to their Lord. Palms up together as we learn to speak to Allah sincerely, to open our hearts to Him, and to take advantage of the blessed moments of Ramadan. There is one final lesson that brings peace to the believer's heart: trusting Allah's response. Because every time a servant raises their hands in dua, a question quietly sits in the heart. Will my dua be answered? Sometimes we make dua with great hope, and the answer appears quickly. A problem is solved, a difficulty is eased, a door opens in a way we never expected. In those moments, it feels clear and immediate. We see the mercy of Allah unfolding before our eyes, and our faith becomes stronger. But other times, the answer does not come in the way we imagined. We ask for something sincerely, repeatedly, perhaps even with tears in our eyes, and yet the situation does not change right away. In those moments, the believer must remember something very important. Allah never ignores a sincere dua. Our tradition teaches us that every dua made with sincerity is answered in one of several ways. Sometimes Allah gives the servant exactly what they asked for. Sometimes He delays the answer because the right moment has not yet arrived. And sometimes, in His infinite wisdom, He replaces what we asked for with something better, something we may not understand at that time. And this is where trust becomes essential. We often see only a small piece of our lives. We see the present moment, the immediate problem, the outcome we want. But Allah sees the entire picture. He sees the consequences we cannot see, the future we do not know, the paths that will ultimately benefit us, and the ones that may harm us. What we think is good for us may not always be what is truly best. There are moments when a person desperately asks Allah for something, believing that their happiness depends on it. Yet years later, they look back and realize that if Allah had granted that request exactly as they asked, it might have led them to difficulty or regret. What once felt like a delay was actually protection. What once felt like silence was actually mercy. Ramadan is a time that strengthens this kind of trust. When we fast throughout the day, we are practicing patience and submission. We are reminding ourselves that obedience to Allah always carries wisdom, even when the immediate benefit is not visible. That same mindset should shape the way we approach dua. When you speak to Allah, speak with hope. Ask Him for what you desire. Ask Him to change your circumstances. Ask Him to guide your life toward what is best. But after you make that dua, place your trust in His wisdom. Believe that He hears you. Believe that He cares about your request. And believe that the outcome He chooses will ultimately be better than anything you could plan for yourself. Because the believer who trusts Allah never feels that their dua was wasted. And sometimes the greatest answer to a dua is not simply receiving what we asked for, but realizing that Allah was guiding our lives in a way far better than we could ever imagine. Palms Crescent.